So we had such an interesting chat the other night. I thought, wouldn't it be fun to share what we were talking about and see if anyone had any questions? You mentioned ahead of the podcast that there was a question somewhere. I couldn't find it.
Oh, it was about how do we keep our life goals? How do we keep our life goals and carry our pain with, I guess, with what's going on now, but in general, if you're grieving, right? Because I feel that what's really going on now collectively is we're grieving so many things.
Yeah.
Plans, events, our life, our regular routine, not being on this watch all the time, being watched of where you are, how you're doing things in public, walking around without a mask on your face. And
right. So I think there's a general all over. So I think what will be fun to talk about is our different perspectives, right? That you specialize in trauma and grief, right? Is that accurate?
Among other things, yeah.
Actually, why don't you give us a summary of, I was thinking about that. Give us a summary of what you do, the lens you see healing through, and where the name Life Butterfly Effect came from.
Life Butterfly Effect came from, and please don't mind my dog. He's actually going crazy with my flipper right now. He's jealous. It came from doing, it can go both ways. You either do one small change in one, it's kind of like you do a small change in one part of the world and then it turns into a tornado.
The theory of chaos, exactly.
So it turned into like, you can do like every little thing in your daily habit, in the lifestyle, in the things you choose to do, can have a ripple effect of healing in your life. And the same thing I realized, like the yin and yang sort of things, the two polarities. The same thing happens if you have adverse childhood experiences, like if you were neglected, if your mom was working 2 jobs because she was single and she had to put your meal on the table. It's not that she wanted to. Just that neglect has a ripple effect later on in your life as well.
Well, I think that applies to everybody, right? So that's I think our connection, along with our Eastern European heritage, and the way why we resonated so much with each other, we actually met on Instagram.
We did.
Is because I look what you call that sort of butterfly effect, and I actually quote the butterfly effect at the beginning of one of my chapters, because I look at the relationship between events. Right? Like how did this in your past lead to this predisposition or thing that you kind of carry with you, right? Which leads to these outcomes in your life and repeated sort of themes that show up in your life.
Right.
So
the way that when we're younger, we're helpless. We're not the ones in control of our lives and our decision. And even the way we interpret things, we depend highly on our caregivers for co-regulation and affect regulation and all of that stuff. But when we grow older, we have these parts of us that have been untended to, but we can still apply that whole butterfly effect theory of one little thing that you now do towards your healing will have like a ripple effect of healing in time throughout your life. Yeah,
exactly.
That's why sorry to interrupt. Because you asked me what I am. I call myself a healing strategist because that was the best title I could find for this sort of stuff. But I guess the common term is life coach.
I like healing strategist. And it also, you know why? Because it points out that really life lived well. You might get lucky, right? You might get lucky with like parents that parented you just in that just right way for you, and then life rolls along really well. I don't know very many people who didn't come across some adversity. Of course,
or bullying. Even if you had great, parents, maybe there was bullying in your school. Maybe something happened, in society. Maybe your country went to war. There's so many things like, trauma happens in so many circumstances in our life. It's nice if you have that home nucleus that it's caring and nurturing. We would all wish we would have had that. Right. But then even if we had that, there's more layers to it.
100%. And what I like about the word strategist in what you call yourself is it highlights that we need some intentionality, right? There needs to be some intentionality in setting your life course and checking in to see what's showing up rather than just sort of throwing your hands up and going like, this is happening to me. And yes, the pandemic is happening to all of us. Yeah. And at the same time, we have some locus of control. We can look more deeply into how things are showing up repeatedly for us. And I think that why this is so timely for us to be doing this right now is that all of us are under this similar stressor, right? Some of us are experiencing it far more than others, that's for sure. But it is very likely to bring out whatever your thing is, it's going to start showing up now. And it's gonna get uncomfortable. I wonder if anyone else listening notices that whatever their thing is, it's showing up more now. But that is why you need to be strategic. You need to be mindful, right? And attend to what's going on.
And I would also add self-compassion and self-forgiveness and being gentle with yourself as well.
Yeah, 100%. So it's true. I think that our conversation is very good yin and yang, because I do tend to, in the acceptance versus change balance, I know myself that I tend to go for change too fast, which is not always widely appreciated. But change can't happen without acceptance, right? Until you've accepted where you are, how you got programmed, the way life is, you can't really start enacting those changes. And it's all about doing it with a kindness of knowing that you're just in the universal soup, right? That we all have a thing. We all have, things that get in our way.
That's so funny you mentioned that, because I call it the spaghetti bowl. the universal. I like the spaghetti bowl with like meatballs here and there and sauce, and it's all mixed up. And
exactly. I think I call it the soup.
That's so cool. I didn't know that.
That's funny. Because it applies to all of us, right? And I think it's that destigmatization thing, right? It's so, and when I say destigmatize, I don't even mean like, and certainly I mean this as well, like we shouldn't stigmatize people with mental illness, with illnesses of the brain and cognition and things like that. But what I mean is that we're all in the soup, destigmatizing that we all have glitches in the hardware, right? That no one has the market on objectivity, is what I'll say.
And also in this stillness that we're experiencing right now, and this isolation, is when all of these glitches come up for asking for attention, kind of like Bruce was doing now, because I feel that we can no longer easily distract ourselves or just do things to kind of not think about our pains and our hurts and our past, even, right? That has been in our body, like the mind-body connection. And now that we're still, we have our body, if you're living alone and quarantined alone, or if you have family and then there's some triggers there with the family you're quarantined with, and all of these things are coming to bubble up at the surface for nowhere for us to go. Like, it's not like you can leave to go to the office. You can't go hang out with friends. You can't go out for drinks. You can't go out for coffee. You're stuck there. And now I feel like we're collectively, I have to pick a non-aggressive word, collectively asked to process these feelings that are coming up, and they're carrying their own information.
Exactly. The Real Alchemist here has a great quote: "Truth reveals itself when our social crutches and identity are no longer serving our soul's purpose." Interesting. And to the Real Alchemist, so I've often asked myself, is what we are called to do as healers, is it a crutch, right? Because I've been asked about this too, since I've been not seeing so many clients lately. Is what we're doing a crutch and a distraction from our own stuff as healers, right? Or is it something that we're here to do to serve our soul? Or is it both sort of happening? That's exactly right. All of our distraction and avoidance strategies are going to start showing up when we're confined like we are. I've actually known a lot of people who are still going to their offices. And then they, give the whole routine line about, oh, I'm going to my office, but I stay distant and da, da, da. And I'm sure that's okay. But a lot of it's just because they can't focus with their families around.
Totally. Yeah. And sometimes I do believe that, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, because we cannot live in a constant state of being flooded. So, and with so many
That's
triggers
exactly right.
and yeah, so many
Well, let's talk
triggers.
about that, right? So the
Hmm.
flooding, right? You're exactly right. Flooding is what happens when you have what we call in cognitive behavioral therapy exposure, right? You've been exposed to the trauma. You can't your crutches are taken away. You can't distract as much. You're out of Netflix binging. So maybe we could talk about some healthy self-soothing, some healthy ways to be there for yourself while in confinement that isn't too overwhelming, but is still healthy and not avoidant. Do you have any strategies that you use in your practice that sort of might bridge that gap?
I usually do with clients, I do like meditation where we just, close our eyes, do some deep breathing, and I ask them what it is they feel in their body, what sensations they're feeling, and if they could sit with that just for a moment, not too long, and if anything
Nice.
comes up with that. And then we just sort of unpack it, that one thing at a time. And I do it all in a meditation format, and it kind of allows it to be, it allows it because of the mind body connection, it allows it to come to the surface because we're so crowded into like between a rock and a hard place right now. It immediately comes up, we process it, we release it, and we're kind of like being with it in a way
Being with
that,
it, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah,
And there's
that's
this psychotherapist that I really like, Matt Licata. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He
mm-hmm,
calls it befriending it. And
mm-hmm,
that really, really, I love that. So I'm
yeah.
using that a lot. Like, don't run from the feelings, try to befriend them, but just 1 second at a time, not, don't like immerse yourself, deep dive in it because,
Well, it
yeah.
depends, right? It depends where the person is and how much they can manage. I actually, chapter 8, my book is actually called Making Nice with Your Emotions.
Nice,
Um,
nice.
or I think they made me edit out one nice because I was over my word count. But that is the entire objective of being skillful with your emotions is slowly training yourself to even talk and speak to your emotions, developing a better relationship with your emotions so that they can, so you're not so programmed to immediately, like in the autopilot reactivity, run away from them.
Yeah, and I also found that when I started on this journey and I was in therapy and my therapist would ask, the world famous question, and how does that make you feel? And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. And then I realized I don't have a vocabulary
Yes.
for how that makes me feel because
Yeah.
nobody asked me and none of my caretakers said, "Hey, Anna, how does this make you feel?" Nobody cared.
Yeah,
So
that's not on the Eastern European
mm,
agenda.
it's not. And as long as it gets done, we don't care how you feel about it. Just make
Yeah.
sure it's done.
Yeah.
So I actually, what I found useful was that tool of the Wheel of Emotions. I don't know if you've
Mm-hmm.
seen it, and I
Sure.
have posted it numerous times on my feed as well. And I would show up in session with the Wheel of Emotions myself, and then I provide it with my clients now to
It's great.
give you a vocabulary of what you could be feeling. And then for some reason, when you see it there, it's like, oh, yeah, that's how I feel. And just that helps me take the edge off just a little bit because at least
It's
now I know where
amazing,
I'm
isn't it?
standing. It's like I'm, like on Google Maps, now I know where like the drop pin is. Now I know where I am. I'm no
Great
longer just
metaphor.
floating around. Yeah.
Great metaphor. And actually, I don't know if you know this, but there's a huge amount of really excellent neuroscience research, behavioral research, psychophysiology research that shows that when you find the word that has that just right feeling for you, that labels your emotion, and remember, it has to be an emotion word, like
Mm-hmm.
angry, sad, disappointed, and it's one word. When you find that, we see that the prefrontal cortex lights up and downregulates the amygdala in the brain. It helps regulate behavior. It helps people self-report that they feel a little bit better. So it's true that just finding that one emotion word in a heated moment or in any moment helps you begin the process of
Mm-hmm.
self-regulating. And what you've done in that moment is you've honored your emotion, right?
You
By
have.
by
And
labeling it.
yeah, and like Dan Siegel with his brain, you know this, right? With like it's the prefrontal cortex
Uh-huh.
here and the limbic system, and then you flip your lid, and then if you find the word, it comes back, and you're back online with your prefrontal
Great,
cortex.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's like the one skill that I cite over and over and over again. But also, like you said, turning into the body. because the body's a little bit more concrete. In fact, in all of the meditation interventions that I've studied, there's a common element. One of the common elements is that they always start the meditation in the body. That's the first anchoring place. That's because I like to say, minds time travel, bodies don't.
Right.
So when you anchor, like if you're listening and you feel your butt in the chair, or you feel your feet on the floor, or I don't know if Bruce is still there. When
he's still here.
If you feel physical sensations, that's a great way to start anchoring when we start to get super tied up in the, anxiety of the future, or the sadness of the past, anger about what's going on, etc.
I also want to bring this up because if I felt it, and I know others have felt it as well, when I started meditation, it took me about 4 years to be able to do like mindfulness meditation. The reason was my sensations, my bodily sensations were too triggering. I couldn't be with them. Yeah. So
that happens to a lot of people.
To traumatize people.
Exactly.
Because you have like this what like my body, I had not befriended my sensations, I had not befriended my body. So it took me like about 4 years. So I tell people, you know what, if you don't feel comfortable doing this, then walking meditation. I have clients who are talking the whole session and walking with me on the phone. Nice. So I know I used to do like the walking meditation and not pay attention to my body necessarily, but pay attention to the trees, to the birds, to the whatever around me, the sounds around me.
How did you? Sorry.
Another thing I didn't like was when I'm just sharing this because in case other people feel I can't meditate, I want them to know that it's not
really important.
It's not them. Yeah. Another thing I wasn't comfortable with was guided meditation, where they would tell me when to breathe, when to hold it, when to whatever.
So it's an excellent test of judgment, though, because you're like,
yeah, and then like going back to trauma, you're not gonna tell me what to do. Like even my breathing now, and I would walk around like I don't feel zen at all. I want to throw my speaker out the window right now. So then what worked for me then after the walking, then I realized that music. And I would breathe whenever the hell I wanted to. I would do whatever the heck I wanted to because this was my meditation and nobody was going to tell me what to do. And that was a trauma response, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So I just want people to know that.
Over and over. Yeah, that is absolutely true. And I love that you're bringing that up too, right? Because it's so important to remember that you have to start where you are, right? Yeah, exactly. And that could be I'm not a long meditator at all. I've done retreats and I've done it, but that's not my mode. All the meditations that I make for other people, I try to make them as short as possible. I think that what meditation it teaches us how to do is befriend the discomfort. And that means you have to do that in a way that's, like they say in chemistry, titratable, that you do a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And everyone's on their own growth path, and there's no better or worse at all. Because there are actually people who are the opposite, by the way. In my practice, in my book, I call them castle versus village people. Village people are more sensitive and connected and creative, and might have more difficulty sitting still and with their emotions. And then castle people are a little bit more guarded. They seem like they have their stuff together, but they don't know how to even get in there. So they don't know how to access there. So you can be either an overregulator, which is the castle person, where you don't know how to even connect with your emotions because you're so guarded, or you can be an underregulator, which is a village person, where someone is like more easily triggered, more sensitive.
That's why healing, in my opinion, has to be so personalized.
Yes.
And all of these generic suggestions and whatnot are things that work for others. They may not necessarily work for you. And
I agree.
You got to find what works for you. And for me, my work with my clients is try to tune into them as much as I can. I'm an empath. I'm a highly sensitive person, so my intuition is really high. So that helps as well. And the background in trauma awareness also helps. But right now, I think that, our sense of adaptability, I always bring this up. We've, as a collective, we've gone through so many things in the past, so many terrible things, and we're here alive today as human beings because of our adaptability, our capacity to adapt. And as much as we are, uncomfortable, for example, all being quarantined, and it's something that is triggering and it's frustrating, and And we fought it so hard at the beginning, and then there were all the funny memes about it. But here we are, how many weeks later, quarantined, and we've adapted to this new
Exactly.
normal for now and
Absolutely.
doing it.
So I wanted to say one thing about something you said a moment ago. I think we do have to do what works for us. And then the question is to ask, what does it works mean? Does it work, and does it work long-term or short-term? Right? So that's where we get stuck. So actually that ties perfectly with adaptability, right? So what worked for us before the quarantine doesn't work because we have to stay in, because if we go out, we risk dying and or killing other people, right? So I think it's interesting to think about, and for others to think about, if you feel stuck, if you feel frustrated, if you feel like you're suffering in some way, the question is, what's not working anymore? That's when suffering starts to show up, when the road of life changes dramatically. And coronavirus is a great example of the road changing dramatically in our lives. And now suddenly you start to feel uncomfortable feelings because the discomfort is likely, and I'm open to argument against this, the discomfort is because you're trying to use what used to work and not adapting as flexibly as you might need to the current conditions. I know as I'm saying that there are people who have really hard conditions and anyone would feel that way. But does that make sense to you, that the stuck place is somewhere when what used to work stops working?
Yeah, and I'm very familiar with that place myself. It's the freeze mode, the fight, flight, freeze.
Or freeze.
Yeah. And submit or attach. But the freeze mode, I was, for the first 3 days, I was in freeze mode myself when it happened. And I was like, okay, I've been lying here on the sofa. It's been like 5 hours. What the hell am I doing? I haven't done anything. I don't even realize if I'm hungry. I was completely like, what?
Interesting.
And and I one day went like that, and I've learned, to have compassion for myself and respect my body and the signals it's sending me. So then I went to bed, and the next day, same thing. And I'm like, okay, I gotta inquire a little bit. So I did some reflection on my sensations, and then boom, it came to me. And I know that a client of mine also referred to this. So
what was it that came to you?
I went through the revolution of the fall of communism in 89. So I was born in 81, so I was 8 years old, and it was revolution outside. There were shooting. You couldn't go out. So basically you couldn't go outside, and you didn't know how long it's going to take. So it was the same thing like now. So it got triggered. I was back to being that, my body memory was back to be like, I can't leave because I can't go outside because it's not safe. Whatever the circumstance, back then they were shooting, now it's the pandemic. So I can't go outside, it's not safe. How long is this going to last for? So for 3 days, I was like, just kind of, and then I identified what it was. I'm like, oh shoot, I literally just got triggered back to the 8-year-old.
Bingo. That's a great example.
I was in freeze mode, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. Oh, I understand what's going on. So just providing myself that self-understanding and kind of like, again, like that pinpointing on the Google map. Okay, now I know where I am. Now I know why I'm on freeze mode.
Right.
And now I got to be a little bit more mindful and pay more attention to, like, am I hungry? Am I tired? Am I this? Am I that? But I didn't really push myself because I had the compassion to be like, okay, Anna, it's okay. You're the 8-year-old girl again. We're going to get through this.
Nice. What you've just done is modeled for people, right, how subtle a trigger can be, right?
Oh, yeah.
And how subtle, whether you have a very clear trauma example, but like you said, we all have varying degrees of trauma that have hit in our life. And when we have a stronger or an unusual reaction for ourselves, the question we want to ask ourselves is, how is this feeling familiar? Like something from when I was younger and not as capable of taking care of myself. For me, since I've been on my own for a long, long time, I've been on my own since I was 15. My family's deceased or mentally ill or substance abuse are things that, so I don't have family in my life. So for me, I have to do everything myself. No one ever helps me. I'm alone in the world. And so anything that smells, anything like that will trigger me. And what I tend to do is I get a little aggro, like, fine, I'll fix it.
Which is why Laura's so go, go, go.
Exactly. And I'm working on it. I'm working on slowing down. Every time I turn on this thing, I'm like, okay, we're not going to get too stressed out about it. But poor Ruben, who's downstairs right now, is like, okay, yeah, sure. It's funny because then every time I do one of these, everyone's like, oh, you're so natural. I'm like, yeah, you don't see the maniac that's right behind. But that's what my work is about. I want people to have that gift of self-awareness, right? That compassionate self-awareness, that place where you can go, oh, this is my pinpoint on the map. I love that metaphor that you use. This is where I stand, and how the kinds of things on the map that can make me react in a way I don't want to react, that's not true to my values. And when you start to get good at that in a really compassionate way, life doesn't feel so chaotic anymore. And life, it feels like you have a little bit more of a grasp. Actually, this is where I talk about this in my chapter. It's chapter 2, where I say, a butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, and you have a hurricane in Ohio. I say something like that.
Pretty much.
Yeah. But when you know your own factors to consider, right? Like, oh, because when I was a child, this happened. Now, when these kinds of situations, I immediately will have an interpretation related to, so I call these passengers on the bus. Your body is a mind-body vehicle that you've driven from childhood to now, and you've collected these passengers that are your trauma passengers. And when you start to overreact or react in a way that's not serving you really, and you notice this happening repeatedly, so if it's a heightened reaction and it's happening repeatedly, you know it's a passenger. Your job is to get friendly with your passengers so you can then enact your skills to override them. And so that helps me put things in nice little bento boxes so I know exactly what's going on. And that's my method of teaching. A little bit different than yours, but I love your way as well. It's just a way of finding some structure within the chaos.
Yeah, totally. And I do think that that question at the beginning, how do we, live our life and live our purpose while we're experiencing this pain? Well, I think maybe we could do both at the same time. There's nothing that says you can't hold two emotions at the same time. Like my grandpa, God rest his soul, passed away in February. And that doesn't mean I haven't had moments of laughter and joy while holding the grief for his passing. So I really feel that, we can be scared right now. We can feel uncertain. We can feel pain. We can feel grief for what's going on and our life changing the way it has. But that doesn't mean that we don't hold a hope and the love for our future as well. And
it's what we call in my world a dialectic, holding the bad and the good. The black and the white. And human brains, when we get stressed, we go very all or none. We get very psychologically rigid. So that's what we're all really tested to work on, that psychological flexibility right now. To stay present and watch the whole kaleidoscope of thoughts, feelings, and emotions go on. The Real Alchemist posted here again that it's that inner space or inner standing, which is very cute. Sorry, it floated by me. I'm not very good at this yet. Between our thoughts and our emotions. And that is like, how did having to stay home create some subconscious beliefs? And like you said, probably more embedded in the body, a sense of, stuck, trapped, not safe, right? That made you shut down like that. And when we have that understanding, we notice the relationship between a fact. And so in my teaching, I teach, note the facts. What are the objective facts? We're in lockdown. There's a pandemic. People are dying, right? And then what are the interpretations about my safety? What are my emotions? What are my bodily sensations? And what are my impulses related to that? And that's where you kind of get that space I talk about it as if you're untangling a necklace. It's all knotted up, and you're kind of going like spreading it all out and laying it in front of you.
Right. Yeah,
exactly. I haven't been very on top of, I don't know if you can see any questions that look like they needed.
I don't have access to it because you started the live. So if you could.
Sorry, everybody. Let's see if I can see it on mine. Of course, I'm not on the right page.
I just saw them going up, but now I can't access them anymore.
Okay. I don't know where I'm going to find them. Let's see if I can find them.
Another thing that I think while you look for that, I think a
Yes,
lot of
please.
people felt pressured of accomplishing all the things that they couldn't accomplish when they didn't, because they didn't have the time. And now that they have the time, all the time in the world, they want to
Yeah.
do all the things. And some people, that's their coping mechanism. They're cleaning, reorganizing everything, and, you know, living the perfect uh, Martha Stewart organization life of their household. And some people not. And I think that both are okay, because both are coping mechanisms. And we have to
Sure.
understand that the one who's frivolously cleaning their house and organizing and doing all the things, that's the way they're coping with the fact that they're on lockdown and it's a world pandemic. And the one who's just, you know, nurturing themselves and watching Netflix and trying to make a good decision by having just a couple fruits a day and, you know, not only junk food, that's the most they can do. And I have empathy and compassion for both of them, because they're both coping mechanism, and we shouldn't beat each other up for either not doing all the things or for not resting, because the ones who are like, oh, I'm always, you know, I always have a firecracker up my bum, I should be resting now, but I can't. Of course you can't. You're in fight or flight mode. You're scared, right?
Right. So yeah, the question is, where does my dog's dreaming? Sorry. um, I'm sorry, people. If someone has a good question or something they really want us to answer, if you would post it again, that would be awesome, because I don't see
Can you
where
be a
to find the
castle or a
questions.
bit? Can you be a castle or a village?
You mean, can you be both? Is that the question, or?
Yeah.
Yes, oh, that was a great question. That was my friend Denari, actually. Yes, 100%. So, um, and the question, and you want to be both a castle and a village, by the way. Of course, we want to be compassionate, empathic, sensitive, loving, caring, right? And sometimes you just need to pull that wall up and get your stuff together, right? So in times actually of you know, when there's a crisis or when you're in a position of leadership, that's a time when being a castle person is a very effective way to be in the world. It's not so effective to be sort of breaking into tears and being super sensitive when you're trying to lead your troops into battle. But there are also times where you need to let that wall down and understand the people who you're in leadership with. So you can absolutely be both. What happens, at least when people show up in my office, is there's an imbalance, right, between being castle-y and villagey, being sensitive versus holding your stuff together. And I think we can talk about it in the context of lockdown right now, of being confined to our homes. How can I maybe create a schedule for myself and set some targets that absolutely have to happen? You know, I think like everybody, you sort of have those lazy days at the beginning. You're like, I don't have to put my clothes on. And we joked at the beginning that I blew dry my hair today. But so I think between the acceptance and change, we know this actually from the science, that it's always good to have a good balance of it. Sometimes you have to push yourself a little bit. I use this example when I had a health condition a couple of years ago, where I had these extreme fatigue bouts where I literally couldn't stand up. And I would apply what I apply to emotion regulation and my skills to that too. There are days where I would crank myself up and get my butt out of bed, even though, I mean, although some days I literally couldn't. And then some days you just have to listen to your body. So the question you want to ask yourself is, are you both listening and saying it's okay? So you want to be kind to yourself, but you want to be benevolently demanding, like a loving mom who says, sweetheart, you have to take a shower. You have to, you know, get up and put a pair of pants on, that kind of thing, without being tough on yourself. And just setting, I'll add this part. Set your goals in levels. Don't say, oh, today I'm going to, you know, do the laundry, wash the dishes in the sink, work out, and, you know, juice. Don't set these incredibly unmanageable goals. Set your goals in what I call 3 levels of optimal. Like if you were your perfect self today, you would do what? Acceptable, the darn good job, and a pass, right? So that way you don't set yourself up for pass fail. And that is a great way to be kind to yourself while still nudging yourself towards your goals and values.
I kind of do my goals per week now.
Great.
I kind of give myself a week to do the things. And if I get inspired, maybe if I would have said, oh, you got to clean the house today, scrub the tub, whatever. And I'm like, I don't feel it today. And I didn't know I wasn't going to feel it when I wrote that list yesterday. So now I'm giving myself kind of like a week of things to do. And then there's like the necessary every day, gotta shower, gotta have
Yeah.
breakfast, gotta, take the dog out for a walk, all those things. But then the other things I give myself lenient, I'm lenient with myself in terms of maybe I won't be able to do it today. I won't be feeling the energy. Maybe I don't know how I'm going to sleep at night. A lot of people are having issues with sleep right now.
Yeah, that's another important topic. We should do a
Yeah.
call just on that.
Yeah. So that's another thing that I may, give myself this goal to do next day, but maybe I won't have a great night's sleep because God knows what's going to be on the news or something, right? So that's what I do.
Are you practicing? And yeah, I think that's exactly it. I make my calendar for the week and those little boxes get moved around all over the place. It's just giving yourself
Flexible.
some structure. I call it my Picasso metaphor, actually.
Oh, that's nice.
Picasso was a finely trained artist. He knew how to paint with the most minute detail, scale and depth, perception and all that. And it was after that training that he jumped off and, became more creative and let loose. So it was a little bit like he was trained like a castle person and then let loose like a villager. And I think it's that dialectic or that bothness of structure and ease that makes us successful moving forward. And I'll just say, especially if you have chronic depression, right? Or anxiety that makes it so you have always had trouble leaving the house, those kinds of things, that's where we have to start to learn where you can titrate that ability to step into the discomfort so that the discomfort isn't causing you to avoid the things in your life that are important, like family and friends and things like that. That's super important.
Another thing that I've realized is I need a little bit of variety. I'm an introvert by nature, but has gotten a little too much even for this introvert. So I assigned areas, like before, let's say I would have dinner while watching TV, but now after this whole quarantine thing started, my dining area, because I live in a condo down in Toronto, my dining area is definitely where I want to eat. My TV space happens on my sofa. My office, my work happens in the office, and where I take my client calls is now in the office. I'm giving myself a variety of places to be around the house because it provides my brain a sense of variety. So then it kind of helps. It helps anchor me. It helps anchor me. And I think that feeling anchored during a period of uncertainty is essential. That's what works for me. May not work for everyone, but I'm trying to find things that can anchor me.
I think I would argue that everyone needs anchoring. We all need a true north, something that we can say, okay, this I know is happening. And that is where the uncertainty of everything that's happening, it's, again, the bothness. We have so much uncertainty now more than ever. We need something that we can rely on. And so it sounds like having your little routine of moving from place to place in the house is helping you with that. I think it's also important to talk just for a second about sleep hygiene, right? And about how easy it can be. And we fight it all the time. We've been in lockdown a little longer around here for our personal reasons, which maybe I'll talk about in another talk. But sleep hygiene is essential. So sleep hygiene is basically being disciplined about what time you go to sleep and what time you wake up. Because as animals, we are built to rise with the sun and go to sleep when it gets dark. You don't have to be that extreme, but starting to tune down devices, dim the lights, get in bed at the same time every night, get up even if you're tired, so you're tired enough to go to sleep that night, reducing caffeine, those kinds of things are probably more essential than ever right now because we don't have our normal routines to keep us in check on our sleep hygiene. And that sleep is going to be a big promoter of your resilience during this time.
Totally. And I do that. Once the sun goes down, I always try to light a few candles, or I have some twinkle lights and keep those for ambiance. And I also focus on coziness. Right now in Toronto, it's still a little chilly. So I have soft blankets and soft socks. And I try to give myself that nurturing, you're being held. Soft hoodies, just a lot of softness around me, pillows and my dog, and just a lot of somatic felt,
that's a great idea.
The sense of touch, just a lot of softness for the sense of touch. That also I find soothes me. And yes, I try to turn off the lights. My son doesn't always agree with that, but and then
he doesn't agree with the pillows.
He doesn't agree with me turning off the lights when
Ah,
it's like 9 o'clock. He's like, why? I'm like, no, we gotta settle down. He's like, why? So I give him that whole speech and
sorry, dude.
yeah, sorry. It's the melatonin that has to start kicking in.
Exactly.
And another thing that I do at night, a routine that I have that I started is there's a lot of, so I like YouTube for a variety of videos, and there's a lot of YouTube videos. I think it's called like Pro Walk something, like it's walking tours. So I put it on at night. My son's already in bed, and I put on these walking tours through Italy or through Spain. And it gives me this sense of like traveling, and I put
Nice.
it
Those are
on,
some good tips.
yeah, and I put it on movie mode. So it's all, in the ambiance. And I kind of like settle down and I see some things on in the video, and it gives me a sense of movement, but and like not going anywhere. So all of these, like, and that's something I found for myself. I'm also the type of person who would watch cleaning videos for like 10 minutes on YouTube in order to inspire myself to start cleaning my house. So stuff
So
like that.
what I'm hearing from you is that you're really, what's great about you, and I know you from the little bit that I do know you, is that you are a great self starter, right? And so you're using technology as it should be, as it's made for, to motivate you, to inspire you, to help us stay connected. And those are all great, super great tasks, especially, again, if you're finding it difficult to titrate the discomfort with finding comfort. So those are great ways to motivate yourself. Sorry,
There's some questions. There's some
yeah.
questions. One asked about how to deal with anxiety, like health anxiety. And then sometimes having difficulty going to bed. Her partner is going to bed at 3 a.m.
Yes, I see that one. Okay. And thanks for your patience, guys, with my, I'm going to see if there's a way I can set up reading them at the same time so I can be better at answering them. With someone asked about anxiety.
Yeah. How do you deal with anxiety in this period?
And well, as we've been saying, I'll start with a broad statement. As we've been saying, being confined in your house is going to bring up more of your predisposition for anxiety or depression, for that matter, because you don't have as many distractions. So starting by being compassionate with yourself for that this is a moment of suffering. So to give specific tips, I'm actually going to give a general one and then branch out from it. The thing I teach, my method is that, like I said, the structured way. Know thyself, know your triggers, know who your passengers are. But even as you're just getting started, the recipe is always 3 simple steps for self-regulation. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is label and identify that emotion. If it's anxiety, say, oh, hello, anxiety. If it's sadness or, I don't actually use the word depression too often, because depression means you've had 5 out of 9 symptoms for 2 weeks or longer and it's impacting your life. So that's not an emotion, that's a diagnosis, right? Mm-hmm. If you're feeling sadness, some people can be depressed and feel a lot of irritability, right? Mm-hmm. Or even anxiety, that their sadness is going to come back. So it's all mushed in the spaghetti bowl together, right? But the first step is label the emotion. Find your word, get out, go online and Google one of those. What is the circle called again?
The wheel of emotions.
The wheel of emotions. And start building that emotion vocabulary. So if you're noticing sadness or you're noticing anxiety, hello, anxiety. I am noticing that I know you're here. And for self-compassion practice, you can just place your hands on your chest in any way that feels comfortable for you. There are actually a few different positions. I'm going to tilt my camera a little bit because you can't see me, or I'll just scooch back. So what you can do is place your hands either one over the other like this, mm-hmm. and then just check in and see how that feels.
Yep.
Or you can put your hands on your arms like a little hug and check in and see how that feels. Or you can put your hands on your face like this. Well, unless you haven't washed them lately. And see how that feels. And last one is you can actually put a fist on your chest and cover that with your other hand and see how that feels. I like this one. It's sort of strength and softness at the same time. Mm-hmm. But using these are studied body postures from the compassion research, the self-compassion research, that have been shown that when you do this with a kind and gentle voice tone towards yourself, right, and sort of like a little cooing, you say, Yeah. Okay, anxiety. Okay, sadness. Yeah, you're here. And notice if you struggle with that. Notice if it's hard for you to be kind to yourself, because the harder it is to be kind to yourself, the harder it is for you to get out of this trap, right? So really practicing that labeling and moment of kindness. And I actually have a video for this one on my website. I'll post it later, www.mindful-mastery /videos or book videos. I'll put it in my thing later. But you can find this practice. So you want to practice that and saying something to yourself like, this is a moment of suffering. I'm not alone in my suffering. We all feel bouts of this emotion sometimes. It's okay. So you start with that self-compassion. You always have to start with the self-compassion, because when you start with just hammering yourself and saying, no, I got to, I should, then you're going to be stuck in the trap. You can use the push like I do at a level 3 distress, maybe a 4. But when distress gets over like a 3 or a 4, you need to start with that compassion place. So step 1, self-compassion, and label the emotion. Step 2, what are the thoughts that are triggering you? If you're anxious, is it because you're thinking, how much longer am I going to be stuck here? Right? What's going to happen? Am I going to lose my job? How am I going to, when you start going down the what if and what's going to happen trail, you're in anxiety soup. Right? If you're like, oh my God, this always happens to me, it's happening to me again, and you're going down the past, now you're in depression soup. If you're judging, now you're in anger soup. Some people just space out. Your job is to mindfully stay present at the intersection and just go, oh, look at my mind do its thing. Okay. And this is what someone alluded to earlier. You need to get good at noticing thoughts as thoughts rather than facts.
Right.
So first, validate and honor the emotion with some compassion. Check your thoughts, get them in check, anchor in your body. Feel your feet on the floor, feel your butt in the chair, but step back from all that thinking, because you're trying to solve the problem, but you're only making it worse. And lastly, change the only thing in your control, which is your behavior. Do some nice self-care for yourself. Get active in something that's related to your values, or something you're good at, something that you're masterful at. That's been known to be helpful for mood. So my recipe for this is validate, check, change. So if you remember, validate your emotions, check your thoughts, change your behavior. Validate your emotions, check your thoughts, change your behavior. That's my short, quick tip that encapsulates all the deeper work that I do.
Yeah, hopefully.
There you have it.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds simple, but like you said, self-compassion is really, really important for these 3 simple sounding steps, because
simple sounding, you're exactly right. Simple, not easy. So don't beat yourself up. Also what I tell people is the very last thing you want to do when you feel really anxious or really sad or really any emotion is be skillful. What you want to do is what your emotion's telling you to do. And that's usually not the effective thing to do unless you're literally being threatened. So using these skills will help you take that moment to say, okay, what's the most effective thing to do right here?
Right. I'm looking at some of the other questions.
Good, thanks.
This is a time for us to look within ourselves, to take time to heal any trauma that one has put to the side. With all our daily social distractions, we may come out of this stronger and healthier. That's a great mindset for it. But somebody else commented that, what about people who are afraid of that self-discovery?
Yeah, I love that question, because it's so true, right? Well, being afraid of that self-discovery is that is sort of the definition of the experiential avoidance or defensiveness that us humans naturally do. So first of all, I think it's brave to if you know you're afraid of it, you're already a step closer, because there are many people who are like, I'm good, I'm fine, and you can't get in. You just can't, these like the super castles. Right? And the self-discovery is scary. I'll say this. It is what Marsha Linehan, who invented dialectical behavioral therapy, says, going where angels fear to tread. It is scary. So first of all, validate that it's scary. And you do what we said earlier. You go in incremental amounts as much as you can. In science-based psychotherapy, what they do is they would create a hierarchy of things that scare you and then start going after them one by one, using some of your skills to self-regulate. You can also, there are of course lots of other little skills like pacing your breathing, right? Checking in with your breath. the way to have calm breathing so you can approach something scary is to make sure that you've inhaled so your belly expands. So you're inhaling deep into your belly, not just, but deep belly breath out. So when you inhale, your stomach should go out like a beach ball, and then come back on the exhale. And also your exhale should be longer than your inhale. So let's inhale 1, and we'll count to like 5. And then exhale 7. I don't know about you, but it only takes one of those to slow me down a little bit. But if you do a few of those, you can literally hack into your psychobiology and activate what's called your parasympathetic nervous system, so that your nervous system starts to sort of slow down. And maybe this is a time to just start to journal or something about that fear of approaching who you really are, what's really going on in there. And now might be a time to start looking into an affordable clinician to guide you in that path.
I was just going to say that it's so easy for us to sit here and, you know, having done the work ourselves and now being, you know, professionals in this field. And then it's easy for us to speak about this, but then others are literally thrown in this moment by the pandemic, being alone, and all this stuff starts surfacing up. Doing it alone, in my opinion, at least for myself and my experience, is not really advisable. I really think that we should encourage people to reach out for help. If professional help or somebody who you know can actually co-regulate you, like if you and your mom don't get along, do not call your mom.
Do not call your mom.
Yeah.
You know what I always say? You know why she pushes your buttons?
Because she implemented them.
Because she installed them, exactly.
She installed them, yeah. So basically, I really think that, especially if it's the beginning where you're starting to face these parts of yourself, or the shadow, as some call it, not doing it alone is so essential, because sometimes it could feel like you're drowning, and that's not what you wanna experience.
I'm just going to give you a counterpoint. I think ideally you'd have a therapist. Absolutely, 100%. I think the reason, you know, we are doing something like this, and the reason, you know, I offer trainings and things a lot, is because a lot of people either can't get to therapy, can't afford therapy, can't find someone that they trust. And I see that so often, that creating self-help tools for people to even start peeking at it. And then when they start realizing they're having trouble with the self-help, maybe if they can afford therapy, that there are lots of options. So, you know, a lot of people either culturally or financially just can't get in to see someone. I'm going to be putting up on my website some more resources that I've been putting together, and California Psychological Association's been putting together for some options. And we're trying to put together some more talks with our district council people, et cetera. So there are lots of ways to get at this. And of course, if you've had a severe trauma, that's going to be extra scary. And especially then, if you've had a really traumatic event happen to you, approaching it with a trained person is going to be the way to go for sure. But if it's, so I think it's both. The answer is both. And I think you and I hold a good balance of opinions and ways we come at things. I think we've been going for quite a long time with some good engagement.
Yeah.
But before people get too bored of us, send us questions if you have any follow-up. For sure, reach out to me or to Anna Marie. And if you have any other questions, any last words, Anna Marie?
No, if anybody needs to reach out, I'm of the belief that most traumas, you know, happen in relationship, and healing happens in relationship. And I always say that hand in hand, we got this, you know, we're together, you're not alone. So if you feel the need to reach out, my DMs are open. And my website is LifeButterflyEffect.com, where I have some more resources posted there in the further reading tab.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Anna Marie. This was fun.
You're welcome.
All right. I think you froze on that note. Oh, there, you just happened to freeze right there. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
All righty.
Bye-bye.